Wouldn't that be great?
All right, so we do our little. What is this? Episode 7, right?
All right.
7.
You put it on your game show persona. Like, what do you?
It's
Time to make the magic happen. Jazz hands.
I got to get into my radio voice.
Coming at you. WNBC.
Giant Penny, episode 7.
Sure.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome, everyone, to Giant Penny, episode 7. Thor,
Season 1.
Thor Ragnarok, and Justice League. With us today are, it's a Triple J episode. We've got Jay Matthews.
Hello. Yes.
James Hansen.
Hello, hello.
Yes. And Jason Powell, which is me. So, I guess, do we want to start with Thor, since that's the one that came out first?
Sure.
Yeah, and that's the one I've seen.
That's the one I didn't see, so I guess
Right,
that means I have
yeah.
to MC.
So,
I think we have the perfect combo for each of the movies. 2 of us have seen it, and the other will have to be the interviewer who plays dumb. Who stands for every man on the street that's thinking about seeing it.
and one of us is the stud that's seen them both.
Yes. Thank
But
you.
mathematically, that would have to happen if there's only 3 of us.
Which one could it be?
Guess.
Which well-hung stud could it be? I don't know.
The first listener to guess which of us has seen both will win free pass. Starring Bruce Willis.
To a live filming of Giant Penny.
Giant Penny episode.
I'll
8.
start off with Thor. I saw Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 on home video about a month prior to Thor. And I got to say, I can't believe I missed Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 at the movies. I was incredibly pleasantly surprised. I liked it better than the first one. I was chuckling all the way through it. And so, to me, the most notable thing about Thor, besides, I mean, I think people think it was a quality effort, but it takes on more of that comedic space comedy theme, or tone, I should say, from Guardians of the Galaxy. You can see the success of Guardians of the Galaxy is kind of migrating over into the other Marvel Cinematic Universes. So it was kind of unmistakable seeing them so close together. So I thought Thor was good, but if you're like me, if you see this movie, there's this creeping, ominous feeling like they're going to go too far with this humor thing. Like it's almost too lighthearted in some places, especially for Thor, because Thor is sort of mythic proportions, larger than life. You got to play it right or it comes across as silly. We used to think. We used to think you got to nail Thor or else it'll all seem ridiculous with these horned helmets. And they've gone completely the other way. And the Thor franchise is now, after this one of the most lighthearted and quippy of them. Didn't you think so, James?
Yeah, I guess I have a slightly different perspective. I kind of think of Guardians of the Galaxy as almost like the distillation of the Marvel movie formula. I kind of thought, that's one of the reasons I didn't really care as much for the first one. I just felt like this feels like such a kind of a formulaic effort. I know I'm in the vast minority of because most people love Guardians of the Galaxy, but to me, like that was the one kind of thing I kind of didn't enjoy about it, was that it just seemed like, oh, this seems like it's really by the numbers, and I didn't really care for the characters as much. And like Jay, I was pleasantly surprised by Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I wouldn't say I loved it, but I would say that it was definitely a pleasant surprise after kind of feeling blasé about the first Guardians of the Galaxy. So I think with Thor, it made sense just because if you watch the Avengers movies and some of the earlier Thors, whenever they did go comedic, and I wouldn't argue that maybe Guardians of the Galaxy was the inspiration for them to go more comedic. Chris Hemsworth is just, I think he's a talented comic actor. He's just whenever he's had to deliver like a comical line in any of the Thor or Avengers movies, he's nailed it. And I think they're playing to their actors' strengths by going in this direction.
Well, I do agree with your point that Chris Hemsworth is better than Chris Evans by far. Yes.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd do them both, but wait, what?
Yeah, I'm happy with Chris Hemsworth. If there was only some way he could have played Captain America and Thor, I think it would have been an interesting kind of double role.
Chris Hemsworth, Chris Pratt, Chris Evans, and a Chris off. What do you think?
I would. Two of those Chris's are great.
Chris Evans and Chris Hemsworth. Agreed. Next topic.
Yeah. No, but the Thor, Jason, you haven't seen it, so you got to be imagining. It's not like a complete slapstick, but it is surprisingly lighthearted. I mean, Jeff Goldblum is one of the major heavies. He's what is he called? Jason James the Collector. I remember him from the comics.
Was he like? I don't think he's the Collector. I think that was Benicio del Toro from the first Guardians. He was the Game Master or something like that. He was one of those. The guy from the Contest of Champions.
Yeah, he does Contest of Champions, but he plays it like over the top Jeff Goldblum. That's the acting choice he made. Why don't I be the silliest version like myself? And they capture Thor. Spoiler alert, but it's been in all the trailers. It turns out that's where Hulk has been as well. And so Hulk has been. They kind of put some Planet Hulk in it. For those of you that don't read the comics, one of the very popular storylines of the last 10 years in Hulk was called Planet Hulk, where the Illuminati, Iron Man, Mr. Fantastic, Professor X kind of launch him into space, and he ends up on a distant planet as a gladiator and becomes a hero of many. Well, that story is not in this movie except for that one part, how they launch him and he ends up as a gladiator, very popular.
Hulk Carter of Mars, right? He
and it kind of has to be
in this movie, he launches himself in the Marvel MCU. You know, he where he was tricked into it in the comics. Remember at the end of Avengers: Age of Ultron, he's falling in love with the Black Widow, and then he takes a plane and just flies himself off. So apparently that's what he did. He just flew himself off into space in a suicide attempt or something, and then he ended up in that war world.
Yeah, I mean they contrived a way for the same thing to happen, but so it was only, you can almost tell that they said, okay, Planet Hulk was cool. The only thing really cool about it is Hulk ends up on a distant planet as a gladiator. So they said, let's just call that one part. And it's true that really the whole series is kind of like all for that moment of Hulk in a helmet fighting the gladiator arena.
Yeah, well, actually, they did an animated version of that storyline, and I thought it was really strong. And it kind of showed you that a live action movie with a good budget would do it. I think the main reason they didn't do it is because Universal has some of the distribution rights to the Hulk. And so that's been one of the main reasons we haven't seen another Hulk solo movie, is because they don't want to split the money when they can just put the Hulk in a Thor movie and keep all the money,
Yeah. I'm just saying they got the best part of it, which was the visual and the idea of him being this gladiator in a helmet. In that storyline in the comics, he ends up turning from being a gladiatorial champion to a champion for the people, because they're living under tyranny, and they say, Hulk, will you be our champion? I still feel like they kind of botched it in the comics, because there was a lot of potential for some really heart-soaring moments where the Hulk says, yeah, Hulk not fight for gladiator, Hulk fight for people. But
Hulk doesn't talk like that in World War Hulk.
Well, can you go with a little artistic license?
Okay,
Hulk doesn't talk like
I forgot that you're
talking correctly. It's the point is it kind of had more potential than I really think it into. I think the latter half of Planet Hulk,
the potential never fully got there. I think it's because they wanted to, they had to tie into World War Hulk, that Marvel crossover event.
Yeah, so that's one of the liberties that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has, and I think they've done a good job. Is they can jump around some of the best sort of broadest stroke moments from all the years of the comics and just kind of say, we're going to plant the essence of that. I mean, you think, Civil War. Civil War was a huge event miniseries, one of the biggest of the last 10 years. And I'm talking about the comic here. It really had a very specific story that played out over many issues. Well, Captain America Civil War says, what the best part of that was just the moral conundrum that the heroes face when they're asked to kind of become registered, and Captain America doesn't go along. And iconically, Captain America and Iron Man become in disagreement and causes factioning. They said, that one little essence is all we're really going to take, and the rest of it,
same thing with
we're going to write a new movie. Yeah, exactly. I mean, each of these movies are just kind of jumping around at these iconic runs that comic fans know and saying, I just want a piece of it. And the funny part is for Hulk, Planet Hulk was kind of maybe the biggest of his recent arcs. You know, World War Hulk kind of came right after it. So it's almost
well, they made
two bookends.
World War Hulk was kind of like
so there's no way they can do
climax
Planet
of
Hulk
that.
now. That's right. After this movie, Thor Ragnarok, there's no way they can do Planet Hulk. They kind of inhaled a little bit of that vapor, showed the image. Now he's going to come back to Earth. That's it. But as to the Thor part, now, Jason, I know you haven't seen it, but there's everything we've just talked about is the contrivance to kind of get the characters together. And it is very contrived. I mean, they just kind of like Thor ends up just kind of plopped and he's like, hey, Hulk's here too. But the ultimate kind of overwrapping story is what's her name? What's the name?
Hela.
Hela has sort of taken over Asgard. She did a fantastic job.
She's awesome. Yeah,
she was great.
Blanchett.
Kate Blanchett. I mean, this feels like the greatest actors in the world are all calling Marvel and going, I am willing to lay down my credentials and make me a Marvel character.
I think the stigma behind doing these movies is gone now. You know, I think it's kind of been proven that if anything, it's a stepping stone for them being able to do more of the work they probably really want to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's become just the opposite. Like if you are a great actor, you're noticeably absent if you haven't yet played a Marvel villain or a Marvel hero.
Yeah, it's kind of, you know, he's with Brad Pitt. You're like, hey, well, why isn't he a superhero?
Yeah. But Jason, I thought there was a very political overtone that you would kind of have liked from Thor. And what it is it's almost like Asgard is a metaphor for the United States or even the West, because in effect they say Odin did a bunch of really horrible exploitive things to get things to where they were, what looked like a golden age to you. What?
To build the golden age of Asgard, you know, the empire that is.
That's right. He built the golden age of Asgard by trampling on and extorting and crushing hopes and dreams of previous people groups. And, you know, this movie forces Thor to confront that truth. And not only metaphorically, but in actual fact, some artwork in Asgard is torn away, and behind it there's a bunch of like artwork with Odin and Hela, just like, you know,
see all the stuff
people
that Jack Kirby wrote. All the margin notes up there.
That's margin notes are there. Stan Lee,
right?
Stan Lee, like copying it
the
down.
Stan Lee that is Odin.
That's right. That's right. He is Odin. And so without spoiling it, the theme is we've entered the era of Thor instead of Odin. And does he have a higher aspiration to not be held back by the evils of the past, but to reach new heights and for social justice? You know, it kind of has this sort of social justice gloss on it, but even
I'm actually curious why Jason hasn't watched it. It's interesting, like which movies Jason will go to and not go to, because you know he's not like like with me. I'm almost like the typical comic fan. I just try to see all the ones I can, you know. And if I miss one, it's just because I just like wasn't able to. Like I missed Logan in the theater just because you know, I had a baby, or my wife did, and I had to be there for it. You know what I mean?
Well, that one was an outlier for you. You would have normally seen it. I think let's each tell kind of what is our basic trigger for whether we see one at the movies. Jason, James, you try to see them all. I mean, you're pretty consistent.
Right. If it's got people pummeling each other, I'm interested.
Yeah, I do not. I like home video. I have a good home theater set up. And I have a family of 5. So for us to go to the movies, it's like $57. Right. For us to watch one at home, it's like 12. Not that I'm that cheap, but it's just like,
no, I don't.
I like to choose my moments, and so the ones I choose to go to are the ones that are literally I don't think I can make it for 4 months and not know what happened. You know, I just want to know. I don't want it spoiled. I want to see it on opening weekend.
I don't think you have to be cheap not to just want to spend $100 to go see a movie. You know, I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, especially if
with the food and everything.
It would be fun for me. If one of my kids said, I want to see this movie, I'd be like, yeah, I'm all in. But usually for these, I'm the one that's kind of like, okay, we're going to need to see this one because there was a storyline called Planet Hulk. I mean, I'm usually kind of like,
shut up, Dad.
They're not, yeah. They don't know which ones. There's so many now. You kind of either have to be an all-in fan or make some choices. If I
Yeah,
miss
it's
it on
kinda-
opening
kinda
weekend,
weird that
I'll
we're-
often miss it.
But Jason, what's your criteria? I'm curious because you're so. It seems like X-Men is definitely.
But you
Having
missed.
the-
You were late to Logan, weren't you, Jason?
Yeah, I avoid them all if I can. Go on. So my criteria is I never want to see a movie in the theater if I can avoid it.
Oh, really?
No,
Aren't you a
it's
master
kind of like
of
what
the theater?
Jay was saying.
You're a master of the theater, musical
That's
theater.
different. That's the theater.
Oh.
No, Jay. It's kind of like what Jay said. Like if there's ones that I kind of don't want to be spoiled on, I can always wait though. But if there's one that I am worried about being spoiled, Logan seemed kind of as enjoyable as it was. It didn't seem like it was all that plot oriented. It didn't seem like twists and turns to it, just based on the previews, which is why I kind of thought I can miss it.
All going to be Logan seemed like it was going to be all tone and music and visuals, and it was.
Yeah, just kind of a wandering lone samurai kind of theme, and so I wasn't as worried. Whereas, like with Days of Future Past, I went the midnight showing on the Thursday. Although that's very rare. In fact, that's the one time in my life I've done it. So yeah, I don't really. Yeah, and then sometimes it just seems like there's an occasion where it's like, oh, I have time, haven't seen a movie in a while, what's playing, and then.
Yeah, I was genuinely shocked when you said that you saw Justice League because Jay, he hasn't watched Man of Steel or Batman versus Superman. And then randomly he's going to go see Justice League. So that I was just like, wait, what?
I think that was a bit of a fluke because by the way, that's what I said earlier. I haven't seen Justice League. I kind of wanted to because I missed Batman versus Superman at the movies. Watched it a year later after it had been just driven like into the ground with criticism, and I was pleasantly surprised. It missed on some things, but after all of the negative hype, it overperformed for me. So I said, all right, I'm not going to let that happen again where I'm not able to weigh in for myself from the beginning. And then it just didn't work out schedule-wise to see Justice League opening weekend.
Still in the
and
theater.
Kind of like, eh.
We can push pause on this podcast. You can go right now. And we'll meet up.
But the way they do it, see, here's the other thing. Now, we forget this. It used to be that home video was like 6 or 8 months after the release. So
like
if you didn't catch it, wait forever. Now
like I feel like when I was a kid.
I feel like Justice League will be on home video in January. I'm like, I can make it. I don't even know when it'll be out.
What this one has Superman meeting the Flash? What?
With the Marvel movies, for me, I've missed the Marvel movies are almost like a TV show now. They're so connected to each other. It's like a TV series. So I feel like now at this point I've missed so many. I never go to see those anymore. I went to see Spider-Man: Homecoming because I think just because my dad wanted to see it.
I don't think I've said this yet. I need to say it in public. Homecoming was okay, but I did not like it as much as the rest of the world.
Yeah, I didn't either, actually.
I
was with the rest of the world. I quite enjoyed it.
I was medium
for
whelmed.
Me, it was because I missed so many.
I think I was not underwhelmed, but I was just properly whelmed, not overwhelmed. Right. I was just whelmed.
I would say, you're talking about Thor's tone with the comedy. I would say like the whole movie has a very different tone, but in terms of like humor level, it's about the same humor level Thor as Spider-Man. Like that level.
Yeah,
of,
the funny thing is,
they
not
really
only
like bouncy and bantery.
Not only was it tone-wise like that, they even have Thor himself being a wisecracker. I mean, and Thor, if anything, I would have thought he's kind of like
the straight
Dolph Lundgren. In the comics, he's the straight man.
Dolph Lundgren. Whoa! He did insult the guy. Come on.
Don't bring up Dolph Lundgren.
Yeah, I mean,
if Loki dies, he dies.
He's very much the guy not in on the joke in the comics. He's the one someone's running circles around in terms of just quips. Almost never makes a lighthearted remark, and in these movies, he's really making a lot of them. Yeah.
He was kind of like written that way in the Avengers. Like one of the famous lines was like, he's like, be careful you speak of a son of Asgard, and he's like, oh, he just killed like 85 people. He is adopted, like that famous line, Like there was like hints of that, and I think this is but this is the movie where they realized how funny Chris Hemsworth was, and they like.
Right. I mean, it's been there before, but this is where it kind of just was so obvious. You're just like, because it's literally not just.
I mean, you could just.
They're right. It's not just that they're writing lines that are funny, and they're funny because this unfunny Thor is saying them. The lines in this movie literally depend on Hemsworth's comic timing. I mean, he's actually delivering lines in a funny way.
And his reaction, like he's got great facial expressions, and like he's good. I think you kind of see it from the critical reaction to this movie. I like all the Thor movies, but I'm a massive Thor fan. He's like, after Superman, he's my second favorite character. So I liked all the Thor movies. This one was clearly the best one, but it's just like, as a Thor fan, it felt great. Like, wow, like he's been kind of like the weak sister of the Marvel franchise. All his movies are lame. Thor's the lame one. And like this movie comes out and like Thor is like one of the cool ones now, so it's kind of the other one's got like 60% or 50% or whatever it was. They were fresh, but just barely on the Rotten Tomato scale. And this one was just like 92% fresh, just like Iron Man and Captain America,
Well, and I think that 92% fresh, I think Guardians of the Galaxy has sort of plowed the field for Thor to be like, we need to judge these movies like, do they succeed at just entertaining and if they're trying to be funny, are they funny? I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, because the first one I was kind of just whelmed, I was not with the rest of the world. It was okay. I was probably pleasantly surprised. The second one had legit chuckles and laughs every few minutes all the way through it. I mean, I thought it was a complete success.
I even detected a guffaw every now and again.
There was occasional guffaw.
Yeah.
And so then, that was what, last summer, August or something. So then you go right into
like
Thor.
February or March.
Was it? Yeah, that was close. Same year. So anyway, I think the critics just kind of said, okay, this is a thing, this idea of because by the way, Jason, you're sort of the proxy for the ignorant audience, but that hasn't seen it. But even Thor even the Hulk, he talks in this one, in a normal tone. But he's not Bruce Banner. He's sort of the dumb Hulk that's not aware of Banner. And he even says funny stuff. Like they're just constantly back and forth. They're like Laurel and Hardy.
There's a great chemistry between the two characters. I would want to even go before Guardians of the Galaxy. Do you think that the reason that the Marvel MCU has this tone is because of the casting of Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man? Because he brought a lot of that like natural, witty comedy, I think, to the character of Tony Stark, and became such a he became so like far away popular of all the Marvel characters. That's one of the reasons when I first saw like Guardians of the Galaxy, the original one, I was just like, this Star-Lord just seems like they want to have another Tony Stark, and they got Chris Pratt because he's a funny actor.
I do, but I would add this because I think this often gets overlooked. It was director Jon Favreau for Iron Man. I mean, he's the one, if you look at all the things that went before it, yes, there were some successful Spider-Mans and there were some other efforts, but Jon Favreau and Robert Downey Jr. in 2008 and Iron Man is what started this current era. And Jon Favreau made the decision to cast Robert Downey Jr. And I think tonally, he said, you know what, Tony Stark was a cocky character before he became Iron Man, so he's going to be kind of sarcastic, he's going to be kind of funny, and some of that's going to carry over even after he's a hero. And so I do think it starts with Iron Man. And
but when you look at a character that has a very similar arc, like Doctor Strange, for example, he wasn't nearly as funny as, it could have been played, you could have been accurate to the story, it could have been played more like that way, where he's like an identifiable character, but he's arrogant, but he's not quite as hilarious and charming. Because, like with Tony Stark, he falls into like Sean Connery as James Bond character, right? Where like you kind of know this character is kind of a dick, but you can't help but like him because of the charm factor and the wittiness,
Yeah, it totally works. Remember this little known trivia that I first joined, my first social media account was actually MySpace, because Jon Favreau got the gig in 2006. And he went on MySpace to say, this is where I'll interact with fans about Iron Man. and it wasn't cast yet. And I went on MySpace just to tell him to cast Vince Vaughn, because as you recall, those two are very close. Already, like, Tony Stark should be a real good wisecrack guy, and Vince Vaughn seemed perfect to me.
I love Vince Vaughn. I think he's a super talent. It's just funny to imagine him as Iron Man.
I think he would have been great, but now it's hard to picture because Robert Downey Jr. is just has so owned it. It's like I can't imagine anyone else. So
he's the Christopher Reeve of Iron Man.
Yeah. So he was able to look past his friend and say, I reject you in favor of someone who's not my friend. You're no longer my friend.
And in actuality, I kind of I put it all the way back to Richard Donner. You know, that first Superman movie had such a great balance of like humor, like, you know, all the scenes in the Daily Planet where, you know, Clark's kind of like this bumbling character Lois can't spell. You know, Jimmy Olsen's like this kind of like hapless gopher for Perry White, who's like always ranting and in his own little world. Like, I kind of feel like that was like if you look back at that movie, like the balance between the adventure, and it's an imperfect movie, but like I feel like that's kind of like one of the earliest things I can think of that had that kind of balance of like levity and serious adventure.
This kind of thing never ends. It's like, oh no, that wasn't it. It was Planet of the Apes 3 when Zero got drunk and started, you know.
No one will ever credit Planet of the Apes 3 for anything good. So.
Yeah. No, wait. Is it 3? Yeah, the time traveling one. The one where Cornelius and Zero travel back to our present Earth.
But so speaking of Superman, Jason, you saw Justice League and you were kind of mysterioso about your reaction to it on the message board. That you have me intrigued, sir.
Very mysterioso. I don't know. Well, like you said, I didn't see Man of Steel or.
Right.
It seemed like so many people were really kind of relieved at the uplifting Superman, or the Superman specifically becoming more what he should have been. And I don't know, maybe I look forward to that too much. He's really not in it that much. And then
no, he's not. I guess I mean, if you watched Batman versus Superman, it was just basically 2.5 hours of Superman just getting punked out. Like, Batman's like 800 times cooler than Superman. Superman he just kind of floats around looking constipated, and people are like, "Whoa, Superman! Jeez, this guy's constantly fucking up." And like, Superman's just floating there, like, "Oh, I hate fucking being Superman. This sucks." And then to have Superman say the line, "No one stays good in this world," you know, it just seems like what's going on? Like, Superman. You know, just when I know Jay doesn't like it, but you look over at the Chris Evans Captain America, whose personality and charmingness is like, man, they're doing Superman better than the real Superman. So like, when you see Henry Cavill, you know, you always had the sense that he could really knock this role out of the park if he was given good material. And he wasn't given great material in this movie, but he wasn't constipated, you know?
Yeah, so I guess overall, it was more or less enjoyable. I guess I was kind of lukewarm on it. There were parts I really liked, and then
right
parts that were a little slow. And then I guess when it was over, I was kind of like,
I just saw a movie.
Yeah, kind of. So I guess I didn't really have strong feelings for it. It's sort of, and I know. Obviously, everyone knows about the whole Joss Whedon, Zack Snyder dichotomy of it, and I definitely, without necessarily saying, "Oh, that's Whedon, that's Snyder," it definitely felt like certain scenes had a lot more punch and a lot more.
Yeah,
that were like certain scenes were just really fun to watch, and then other ones were kind of a drag.
I guess for me, like, it was the best of both worlds in a way. I haven't seen it since the first time, but I really, I guess, you know, like Jay said, like when the bar is set so low, like it got like a 41% on Rotten Tomatoes, which was almost as bad as like the other one, and I was Batman versus Superman, so I'm like, okay, it's probably just another Batman versus Superman with a couple quippy lines from Joss Whedon. So just to have that, like, kind of, and to Jay, I know you haven't seen it, but it really, some people would think to a fault, but for me, it was perfect given like what had happened for it. Like, it was emulating the first Avengers movie to a fault. Like the banter between the characters, like it had that kind of same sitcom-y feel whenever they were in a room together. Each character had a strong personality that really bounced well off the other character. I guess at Superman, like, I think he's just so refreshing. This is like closer to the Christopher Reeve Superman, then to the previous Zack Snyder Supermans. And to Jay, I know you haven't seen the first two, but he's a very angsty Superman before this. He's a mask away from being the Spawn of the DC universe in angst level.
One of the things I liked about it is I have a theory that they succeeded with Avengers, but they did it wrong. And they lucked out because they didn't follow my plan, and it somehow worked out. But
I don't believe
that. I think it labors to try to have a team movie be the culmination of a bunch of individual movies. I think it's more interesting to say we know a few of them, and then a few of them we kind of meet for the first time, and some of them we know more about than others. So, having Aquaman and Flash basically launch in this movie. I know Cyborg did too, but he seems kind of shoehorned in. But Flash and Aquaman, it's something new. And then we can learn more about them. Because what I think they should have done with Avengers is had Captain America be the mysterious character from the past that S.H.I.E.L.D. has been somehow keeping under wraps, and have him figure a little more prominently as the man from the past in Avengers. It's kind of like bring the heroes together, but they're confronting some threat that they've never used teamwork. That we've lost our ability to think like that and fight. And then S.H.I.E.L.D. goes, well, here's somebody that knows something about, world struggle and challenges that have to be met using teamwork. Who is this guy? He's a dinosaur. I don't know. Some guy S.H.I.E.L.D.'s been keeping in a cage all these years or something. Who knows? And then he kind of blows us away. And then in his movie, we find out he's been around. He was a World War II guy, or we find out more. With Wonder Woman, Batman v Superman was a flawed movie, but it was neat because spoiler alert, she appears in that movie right at the end alongside Batman and Superman and did a great job. She was kind of a scene stealer. And then in her movie, we learned she's been around since World War I, secretly doing hero stuff. Apparently the world didn't know that, because in that world, she's kind of just now launching again. And then in this movie, we kind of know those three, and we get to meet 3 and 4. So from a standpoint of the ingredients, I'm not exhausted by the thought of Justice League. I just feel like they don't know tonally what they want to do with this whole thing. Jason pointed out everyone's glad to see Superman being what he always could have been. Man, what a long way to go to get there. You have to slog through movies with that tone just to get that moment.
It's funny too, because they killed him at the end of Batman vs Superman. Spoiler alert! But it's funny because he's reborn in this movie, but he really does feel like a reborn character. He's like totally, charming and quippy. He's kind of like the Bruce Timm Superman, He's got like kind of a swagger and a confidence that he was missing from the other two movies. Justice League was one of those movies I didn't really feel like, with the MCU, with them kind of building up each movie into the final product of Avengers, I kind of felt that was necessary in the sense that Captain America, like the most any quote unquote civilian really knew about him was that there was a character out there named Captain America. No one knew anything about Steve Rogers or any of the other stuff. So I could kind of understand wanting to kind of make it feel like each of the major characters are special. But you get that with Black Widow and Hawkeye, I guess, was their special characters you meet.
Yeah, that's what I like when you tell just enough to have some mysterious interest, like they did with Black Widow and Avengers, like they have done. I mean, there's probably more to tell about Aquaman, but when Wonder Woman first appeared, you're like, I don't know who this is. She's clearly Wonder Woman, but they allowed us to just kind of sit there and learn later that she's, a goddess that's been around since World War I. So if you do it right, it can be just perfect. You tell the audience.
What I was leading up to say was that I think before Zack Snyder destroyed their marquee value with Batman versus Superman, like he could have actually done it the opposite way that Marvel did it, because like I said, no one really, Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor weren't really big in the mainstream world, as these huge blockbuster characters. With prior to this, just having Batman and Superman in a movie alone, just meeting for the first time, was like a huge event to meet in a live action movie. So you could have just built, you didn't even need to do a whole bunch of movies. Just Superman and Batman are in this movie, and then there's all the others. And then by having Superman and Batman, you could build interest in the other characters, and then
Right.
spin them off after Justice League in the way you were
Well,
saying.
yeah, and I just think they handled it correctly in terms of putting the pieces on the board. You know how much I like the idea of recasting Batman without having to do another
Right.
origin story and launch. So they got some good momentum. And if I don't know, I think what we'll end up getting from this is Zack Snyder's out for good, and they'll just start going off onto their own movies because Wonder Woman's clearly a success.
Right, Wonder Woman is going to prevent a reboot, and honestly, I'm hoping that maybe they learned a little lesson from the Sony thing with Amazing Spider-Man, that rebooting was like the wrong way to go with that, and it kind of like killed the momentum of the Raimi series, even though the last Raimi film wasn't the best. By kind of rebooting it, they created like a jumping off point. So I think that they aren't going to reboot, but they could. It doesn't seem. All the rumors are that Affleck really wants to get out of being Batman. I guess he's tired of being Batman. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know what will happen with Cavill. It's kind of a shame if they don't continue with his version of Superman, just because he's finally getting a chance to show what he can do with it.
Is it strange, or did you find it strange? Because I guess it started with Batman versus Superman, which I didn't see, but just heard a lot about. It was an interesting, the wrong choice that Batman was already kind of the Dark Knight Returns, seen it all, pushing close to retirement age at the same time that Superman was like brand new. But when I saw Justice League, I actually kind of liked it. I thought, yeah, there's really no reason they have to debut at the same time except for commercial reasons.
Like there was my thinking behind that is, I think Zack Snyder likes The Dark Knight Returns. He's a huge Frank Miller fan, and I also think that maybe it kind of like in some way vaguely ties into the Nolan movies in the sense that he was kind of Nolan Batman was at the tail end of his career. So like you could almost, if you want to, kind of like it's kind of like how the Incredible Hulk Marvel MCU movie didn't really contradict the Ang Lee movie. So if you wanted to, you could kind of see it as a sequel to the Ang Lee Hulk, but you didn't necessarily have to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a lot like that. In the same way that Thor kind of had Planet Hulk, you could totally spot Dark Knight Returns and Batman v Superman. It's kind of they took some of the interesting images and concepts from that.
Yeah, I felt like it was like. It felt like that was like a big love letter to 80s comics in a way that wasn't too successful in my opinion. But he had like Batman was like the Dark Knight Returns Batman, and like Superman turned into like kind of a Dr. Manhattan-esque character.
Sure,
right. He seemed like just like the way Dr. Manhattan just seemed uncomfortable by all the attention and all the responsibility, and like he wanted to look at neutrinos or whatever. It seemed like Superman was very much that way. Like he had all these people, like remember how the Superman exists and he's American. From Watchmen, there's a lot of press coverage of Superman in Batman versus Superman, Jason, that like is kind of reminiscent of that coverage.
Yeah.
So it's basically Dr. Manhattan versus Frank Miller's Batman.
Which is awesome.
Dr. Metropolis versus the Dark Knight.
It was Doomsday Clock. It predicted
and
Doomsday
Doomsday's
Clock.
at the end of Batman v Superman. Doomsday Clock, Doomsday case. He's got so many levers with Zack Snyder that people just don't get it.
Yeah,
that's right.
Speaking of which, you guys reading Doomsday Clock?
I read the first one just to check it out and see what was what. See if
Yeah, I read it. I'll probably keep reading it. I mean, you read it and you're kind of like, okay, are they doing this? This is like a direct sequel to Watchmen. They are actually just doing this.
I think that before Watchmen kind of quote unquote popped the cherry on like people being like, because that one was the one where it was like, hey, whoa, they're doing a new Watchmen without Alan Moore. What the fuck? And I think this one, like now that that's kind of out of the way and people are always like, okay, they're willing to do anything. Watchmen in the Justice League, that could be on the horizon. So I think with this one, there's less of that like, whoa, what are you doing kind of thing. Now it's just like, okay, well, you did it before. Surely you're going to do it again. So I think that they can kind of go on and do whatever they want to do.
Yeah, I mean, they did the first thing without anyone stopping them either. But by the way, can we keep the podcast, PG-13-ish? I mean, I understand we're kind of like speaking the way we habitually speak, but I would vote for PG-13.
I have not sworn at all. I don't think.
Oh,
I haven't noticed who it is.
Who,
I haven't noticed who it is. I'm not calling any names amongst all of us.
This is like bullshit.
But,
I don't even know what the
I'm
fuck
just
you're talking
making
about.
PG-13.
Hey, we
Yeah,
can
but
bleep that
Watchmen. I mean, excuse me. Doomsday Clock is kind of almost. It's the thing that when they were doing before Watchmen a few years ago, we said, well, at least they're not doing this. But they are. They're doing a direct sequel that shows what happened in the world after Watchmen. And
not only that, but they're
Rorschach's
tying Superman and Batman into it.
yeah, they've got like Batman finding Rorschach's journal and like reading it. This is interesting.
You know, it would be great if these were like audiobooks and you could have Christian Bale's Batman meet Jackie Earl Haley's Rorschach. Who are you? Who are you? What are you doing here? I don't know. Why are you talking like that? You sound weird. You're the one that sounds weird.
Yeah. No, you're locked in here with me. No, you're the one locked in with me.
Yeah, I'm in a prism, and you're locked in within that prism.
Yeah.
That sounds great. You really bring it to life.
Just two cookie monsters going at it.
I disagree. Watchmen was an excellent movie, and Jackie Rorschach's voice was great.
Yes. Hey, like I like to imagine that Jackie Earl Haley, like you know when Rorschach when they're on a case, Rorschach's journal, da 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 da. But then afterwards, like after hey, let's go to a bar and meet some girls. Oh, actually, I'm just kind of gonna go home. All right, well, if you want to hang out, like that's his normal everyday voice. I need to get some eggs. Who wants eggs? Just that's his everyday voice. To me, that voice is so ridiculously comical that I don't know how anyone can stand it.
How do you stand it, Jay?
What are you guys either watching or reading or enjoying this week?
But I agree with. Sorry, I got us off topic, but I agree that Doomsday Clock was. It was interesting. It had a couple plot points. The whole spoiler alert right here, but the whole Ozymandias. Do you mind if I spoil, Jason?
No, go for it.
So basically, the world's figured out Ozymandias. Had that plot. He's the most wanted man in the world, and he's also got terminal cancer. And he's kind of, I guess he's got another scheme going that's going to, I guess, set everything right or do something. So, but you don't know what he's planning or what he's doing, So he's got like a new Rorschach working for him. But it's not the original Rorschach. It's a new guy that's taken on Rorschach. So you don't know what the deal is with him either. So he's kind of set up a few different plot points where you're like, okay, this is, I wonder where they're going with this. It's got, even if you don't love it, you're just on that level. I'm like, well, where's this plot going to go?
That's good.
What are you guys enjoying to watch? Talked about Doomsday Clock, but what else are you currently reading?
I've been following this book, Bug, by the Allreds. It's part of the Young Animal line that what's his name? Gerard Way. He's doing Doom Patrol. He's doing some of the other kind of more B-level DC characters in kind of a Vertigo-esque style. And one of them is this miniseries called Bug, where basically the Forager character from New Gods is like being bounced around. Every issue he like meets a different kind of franchise or character that Kirby created during his 70s run with DC. So in one issue he'll meet Atlas. Another issue he's OMAC. Another issue he meets the Sandman, So it's if you're just a Jack Kirby fan, which I am, it's just an absolute blast. It's just kind of cool seeing Mike Allred draw these different Kirby characters. I love the whole aesthetic of Laura Allred's colors and Mike Allred's pencils and inks. To me, it's like a very, it's like fan service, but directed completely at me.
Yeah, he's got some pretty big shoes to fill if he's doing Doom Patrol, because John Byrne took a crack at that a few years ago, and I think that's considered a seminal run of Doom Patrol.
Well, Gerard Way, not Mike Allred, but Gerard Way, and this is Nick Darrington, who's like just like incredible artist. Like they're doing it together. Well, I haven't read it. I do have the trade. I've
You-
looked at the artwork, so I enjoy that.
Did you read Gerard Way did Umbrella Academy, right?
Yeah, I have
Which
those
is-
2 books. I thought they were good.
I have
I
Umbrella
love those.
Academy. So is he the one that was in My Chemical Romance, or was that the
Yeah,
other
yeah.
creator?
He's the My Chemical Romance guy, which I like. I
Yeah.
like that band. I have all their albums.
Really?
They only had like 3
that's the
hits.
band that they covered that Bob Dylan song for the ending of the Watchmen film by
Right.
Zack Snyder.
Yep.
Yeah.
Desolation Row.
And
Yeah.
Bob Dylan did, some great music himself, as
Yeah, he's
did
an
John
up-and-comer,
Byrne.
that Bob Dylan. I'd keep an eye on him. He's probably gonna go somewhere someday.
Yeah, he's the John Byrne of folk music.
I always thought of John Byrne as the John Byrne of folk music.
Well, I mean, he is. He's a giant.
All right, this reminds me of a great. They were roasting Drew Carey years and years ago, and that guy they always get, Jeff something. He always does. He's always one of the best roasters. He says to Drew Carey, he's like, "Drew Carey is the comedy. What Mariah Carey is the comedy."
Yeah.
It's such a great line.
I don't
Jason,
know.
what's your most recent show? I know you've been busy.
You mean my actual things that I'm in?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't do that.
Next Men
Huh?
the musical.
Yeah, I wish. I almost asked John Byrne how much he would sell the movie rights for. He didn't answer me.
Nathan,
But-
I'm cold. Dum, dum, Nathan, I'm cold.
I think Next
I
Men could
picked-
be a good musical.
Speaking of things we're reading, I'm not reading this, but I did pick up one of those John Byrne Star Trek photo comics the other day. And thumbed
I
through
bought
it.
one too.
I mean, I have finally
What?
figured out what is wrong. I've figured out what is wrong, other than 100 other things with those. Is there the best thing about Star Trek is you're likely going to see some kind of creature or a planet-side adventure. They go places, beam down, beam up. These things are all like conversations that take place in the hallways of the ship, because he's using all onboard imagery, it seems like, because he can't really copy one of the planet side stories because the imagery there is so obviously that story. So unless it's a sequel, all the original stories are like hallway hijinks on the Enterprise.
No, they're all
They're
like,
terrible.
They're designed to be like take place in between specific episodes. It really is like bizarre fan fiction, which is the perfect segue. So to what Jason's
No.
working on recently.
My next thing, I have to talk to James about. James said he might draw a poster for me.
Yeah, like you gotta get it to me. It's a slow time at work. I could probably squeeze it in here.
Yes.
So let me
talk to you
tell me
about-
what you want me to draw, and I'll do it up.
Yeah, I talked to you about this too, Jay. This is the Pulp musical that I'm working on. That's based on
Oh,
stuff.
That's great. Oh yeah, and that crossed my mind about sending you a bunch of books on that. Do you still want me to do that? We could do you could send them back or
Sure.
something when you're done. You want them?
Sure. So anyone listening wants to come to the Milwaukee area in May of 2018, you can see the finished product. I haven't
so we
I'm not
got.
very far in it right now.
Well, what kind of pulp stuff is in it? Do you have a Doc Savage type or something in there, or the Shadow?
Yeah, I want there to be like kind of one of each, like a Dark Detective kind of, and then a Doc Savage, and then like a Tarzan, and then a Western kind of, but like with a sci-fi edge, like a kind of sci-fi cowboy kind of character.
Pulp. He's pulpy. Pulp. You need a co-writer? I'm just making this up. Believe it or not, this wasn't planned.
Let's write the whole thing right now over the course of this podcast. That'll save me something.
I've got a
It'll be
thread
instantly.
I've got a thread somewhere called Pulpy McPulpster or something.
Ooh.
Go check it out.
There's not really a lot of things that rhyme with pulp. I should have thought that through,
Pulp.
but
Big gulp.
Actor Robert Culp should figure in there.
it's not much. But we'll see what I can do. So,
Gulp.
yeah, so
Gulp is the only one I can.
that's what I'm working on in real life.
Oh.
Gulp, yeah.
You got Gulp and Robert Culp, and that's it.
And light bulb.
Yeah, some of these things work, in a poetic sense.
Thomas Edison,
Yeah.
inventor of the light bulb.
Or the word help could be pronounced like hope,
Oh, maybe he's like burping as he says it. Hope! Hope!
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
You guys are good.
Well, I don't see you with a pen and paper taking this stuff down.
It's,
Does it feel
it's-
bad that two laymen have basically mastered your
course,
craft
yeah.
instantly?
Yeah, next time bring a tablet with a pen, because we don't know, these things could come to us anytime.
Luckily, we're recording this for historians,
Luckily, you can go back to the tape and be inspired.
as will future historians.
yeah.
That's right.
Scour the future. Scour the recording minute by minute. Yeah, and then as far as what I'm reading or watching, is it okay to talk about stuff that's a little old? Because that's
I love it. That's
Yeah,
what I'm all
That's,
about.
that's the best thing about it is it's like something we missed.
I don't know if you guys
Savage
were
Dragon.
around in the '90s, but you may have missed this little gem called Quantum Leap, which I've been rewatching on DVD.
Did you buy that? Because I almost bought that Blu-ray set.
That's a series I've always
gotta buy
wanted to
the-
watch, but never.
Have you never seen it?
I've seen like episodes and things. I've always, I like those types of sci-fi scenarios and stuff. You and I, we like Star Trek and things like that. So obviously it's something that's always kind of held appeal to me. The important thing is they have a great lead actor in it. But yeah, it's just one of those things. If it was on, maybe it is on Netflix or something. If it was on something like that, I probably would have seen a bunch of it by now.
Yeah,
they're
it's
pretty
good. It
good.
actually holds up really well.
For those that haven't seen it, he's leaping through time. I can't remember the technology mishap that this future organization keeps dropping him into situations. So the point is, it's kind of like the old comic, The Unknown Soldier. And I don't know if either of you ever read that. That didn't involve time travel, but the oldest Unknown Soldier comics, because the Unknown Soldier could wear a mask, is the story would begin, and one of the characters was the Unknown Soldier, but you didn't know which one. And about 5 pages into it, it would go ahead and reveal, oh, okay, the guy standing over by the chandelier that, did this is the Unknown Soldier. And you would gradually find out what problem he's there to solve, because that's what they use the Unknown Soldier for. They sent him in to, infiltrate Nazi cocktail parties and stuff. Well,
Another character
Quantum
is like
Leap,
a dead man.
yeah, Quantum Leap has Scott Bakula, and he gets dropped into a situation, and it seems like in the beginning it's some other actor playing the character he's dropped into, and then it'll reveal this character you have seen as this person is actually Scott Bakula. And then from there on, they'd have him playing it, but the other people don't see him as Scott Bakula. They see whatever that character. So,
I see him as Scott Dracula.
they didn't have to use a lot of special effects, but there's a very advanced premise for him to be able to be in a new situation every week.
Yeah, I love stuff like that. So anyway,
Yeah.
what do you have to say about it?
I like it.
Me? It's
No, you like it, Jason.
I liked it back in the Dizzle, but I had not seen every episode. I kind of got into it late, so I'd missed a lot of the early ones particularly. So it's great to go back and watch every episode. There's not a huge amount of continuity, because it's literally.
I love TV
so-
like that.
because it's
I
a
love
brand new
episodic
situation.
TV. That's
Well, let me
Yeah.
ask you this: that you may have just answered this question, Jason, but because I only watched, I watched it for a few weeks at a time, and then I drifted away, and I don't feel like I've ever seen a lot of them. Just does the overall arc advance in terms of what's happening to him and his ability to get back to his normal life? Because I never really got a sense if he got rescued out of this job that he's sentenced to do. Does that
Wait, what
Does
was
that
the question? I think
through
I something
the episode?
muted there. I'm having technical difficulties. Repeat the question, please.
does the through line advance through the episodes in terms of what's happening to him? I always got the sense that it would, but I never saw it. Does his fate actually, get some? Do we learn more
does he ever
about?
solve his problem?
Does he ever solve his problem? Does he ever get back to his normal life, or does he get closer?
It sort of goes in fits and spurts, as far as like the first few episodes deal a little bit with the premise and kind of explicating it and kind of teasing it out a little bit, as far as, because part of the premise in the beginning is that he's the one who created this time travel experiment, but guinea pig, and he's basically the only genius, like a modern day Einstein, who could come up with it. But then when he sent himself back in time, a side effect of it was that he's trapped in traveling through time, and he's the only one kind of brilliant enough to get himself back, but his memory has been so distorted that his genius kind of fails him. So he's kind of stuck. And then it definitely settles into just the episodic, what's he going to do this week? And there's less about him, you know. But then kind of in the, a lot of times, like in the season finales and premieres, they sort of get a little more personal, and they so often you'll get, and they're always the fun episodes that you kind of look forward to, but they'll sort of, because it's also, they established that the show first premiered in '89, but his present is actually like it's like a little bit in the future. So every so often they'll have scenes that are set in the time that he came from, and they're like slightly futuristic but not too far, you know. A lot of neon lights and stuff.
Flat tops this high.
Shiny silver clothing, of course.
Right. So they'll tease it out, and they did one episode kind of
jamming the Nickelback in the background.
They predicted so much. A lot of hip hop.
That's a very specific prediction. This band will be very popular, but very ridiculed.
You'd be surprised. No, but yeah. So they'll do like an episode here or there that gives you a sense of what's happening in the '90s, where he's from, and then they build a little bit out of a little bit of a sort of quantum mythology, quote unquote. But not too. I mean, for the most part, it's more just those episodic. There's only 5 seasons, and the 5th season they get a little more
entertained by the idea of like it being in the '90s and then predicting like one of the characters, like they're working on, you know, Scott Bakula's problem. He's like, let's get back to work. All right, what were you doing? Oh, I just saw that new Godzilla movie. It was terrible. They had this whole new design for Godzilla. It was awful. But all right, let's get back to work. You know, like little references like that were extremely predictive.
And then so so it's cool. Every so often there'll be one that I missed originally that goes into lit. Is really exciting when you're a geek like us.
Yeah,
continuity geek.
It
holds up pretty well. But you have to, if you're gonna buy it, you're tempted to buy it.
Yeah. So
make sure to get the Blu-rays that came out only like last year, maybe, or 2016, I think. They corrected some stuff.
I mean, they went on sale. I was watching them pretty closely, and I almost pulled the trigger. I'm just not sure I was ready because, gosh, I've gotten to the point where something like that, I just think, well, if it was that good, they'd put it on streaming and I'd watch it, you know.
Cool.
I don't purchase many series.
They came up with
I tend to want to stream them because they're so tough to store that many discs.
Right.
You know, the other thing, am I right here? And I know we need to wrap up, but you go to watch an old show and you become amazed by how many episodes shows that actually were on TV have. You know, you get used to Netflix where you go, well, I'll watch a season. That's 12 episodes. And then now I'm watching Magnum PI and it's like 36 episodes per season. I'm sure Quantum Leap is somewhere between 24 and 36. And so you said it's only 5 seasons, but it's probably 150 episodes. I don't know.
It's like it's less than 100, so it's manageable.
You know, what sucks is I was really getting into watching Kids in the Hall. I got what was that, CISO? It was like the streaming NBC thing that we were doing through Amazon, CISO, and I got like halfway through the series, and I heard like earlier, okay, their CISO failed. They're going to be taking those off Amazon. You know, it's gonna go bye-bye. And I was like, oh, I better hurry up and get through these. And I blast through a bunch. But then halfway through season 3, I turn it on one morning, gone.
It was gone. By the way, Quantum Leap is on Hulu. Hulu is typically stronger for old television shows. It's got a better selection of those.
No, Hulu is better for TV series, I found. I got that subscription so that I could watch two shows, Outer Limits, the original, and then that show that you recommended, Jay, about the two boys. That was like a parody of Johnny Quest. What's that called again?
Yeah, Venture Brothers.
Yeah, so those are the two shows I subscribed to, but then after a while, I hadn't watched either one in a while, and I was like, well, I'll just resubscribe when I want to watch those again. Why pay the money, when months go by and you haven't watched anything on it, but maybe I need to refresh and watch some Quantum Leap and then get back into Venture Brothers and Outer Limits.
Yeah. Jason, you need to do Venture Brothers too. I know you're going to like it.
Oh yeah, that's totally up your alley in terms of. I know what's great about that, Jason, is it'll actually be good research for you to do your pulp musical, because it's like, Johnny Quest is very derivative of like, that pulp. Was it like not cliche, but like the conceits of the genre and crap like that.
Yeah, it was made by guys that love that stuff. And in Venture Brothers, the premise is that the father on Venture Brothers is like Johnny Quest grown up. His name is actually Rusty Venture, and he was the star of kind of a boy adventure. But his father is a spitting image of Doc Savage. It's almost like he's the son of Doc Savage. What's his father called? Doc Venture or something? I don't know.
Mr. Savage.
Yeah.
No,
and they deal with that a lot in the first two seasons. But it's also very cartoony and not pulpy at all.
It's really it's kind of like a parody of those kind of shows, and it's got that subversive humor I think that Jason really likes. I mean, I in terms of the humor and stuff, Jason, I really think it's totally up your alley. It's got that really 90s sensibility. It's like one of those shows that, like, when you think of Jason's like sense of humor and what he likes, it's like
especially the Fantastic Four one. The Fantastic Four one is the one I thought that one was, when I saw that one, I was like, Jason would love this episode.
You gotta watch it, Jason.
Those guys read comics. Those guys watch $6 Million Man. They like all the same stuff, and they've just made this big satirical cartoon about it all.
Like one of the things was that, like, how the $6 Million Man, like, fighting Bigfoot is like a big thing, like a meme thing on the internet. They had that episode where, like, they had fallen in love and they were living out in the wilderness together, the Bigfoot and the $6 Million Man. It was like a forbidden love thing.
Yeah, that was a defilement of our memories.
Yeah, but it was based on truth, though. There's a truth to it that was undeniable.
That's right. The Fantastic Four one was just an almost direct parody of it, and the guy who does Mr. Fantastic's voice is Stephen Colbert in the first season. And instead of the Thing, they've got like this tragic character who catches on fire and in agony and has to live in a bubble. Just, it's almost like they read all these comics and decided, I'm going to write a cartoon that like 10 people will like. So when you watch Venture Brothers, you're like, I feel like I'm one of the 10 people this was written for,
Yeah, like Mr. Fantastic is basically kind of like this real, like, the other three members hate him. He's almost like controlling their whole lives and stuff. It's definitely up your alley. So my recommendation: drop this fruity Quantum Leap stuff and see what the cool kids are doing and get in with Venture Brothers.
Which I know is a requirement, an official Jason requirement. It has to be in the DVD format, or else it's dead to him.
Complete series is the complete Venture Brothers.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I forgot. That's an additional requirement. He requires that the series have come to a close and be available.
It has to be a box set that I can just snatch up.
What if I were to tell you?
I should mention, because otherwise we'll get tons of emails from all our listeners pointing it out if I don't.
Please don't email us.
That you mentioned Magnum PI, and that's the same creator as Quantum Leap. Donald Belisario created both series. So,
that might have been how I got
coincidence.
I think I said this last time. I'm doing Magnum PI now, and it's actually kind of pulpy. It's pulpier than I knew as a kid. It's clearly reminiscent of those sort of Raymond Chandler, or it reminds me a lot of Travis McGee novels written by John McDonald. That this sort of unattached detective that rights wrongs. And sure enough, in the either the pilot or the second one in Magnum PI, the one where he goes to the hospital desk It's the one where he puts back on his navy whites, which they use that shot in the opening. So you saw that shot. Well, he actually does that in either the pilot or the second episode. And he goes to the hospital at the night desk. And there's a sort of a night watchman there or an orderly. And the guy's reading like a Raymond Chandler paperback, you know. So I think Magnum PI was kind of written by that same generation of guys that sort of loved these older works and thought, how could we do a fresh new Hawaii version of that?
I've asked myself that so many times. How can we do a Hawaiian version of all these great old series, Star Wars, but like more Hawaiian? I don't know. What can
but
we
with
do?
Hawaiian.
Right.
And Quantum Leap, I mean, I don't know. It was Time Tunnel or something. You know, I've always wanted to go back and watch Time Tunnel. I've never seen any of those.
Right. Oh, by the way, so I looked it up on Amazon. You can get the complete Venture Brothers series, seasons 1 through 6, for a low, low price of $109.
It would be stupid not to buy it.
You'd be a damn fool. What you'd be. It's a good series. I don't know that I'd drop $109 on it, but Hulu's like $10 a month or something, so that it's worth that.
He doesn't do anything but DVDs. Period.
Right. Or Blu-rays.
What about VHS?
Yeah,
are you open to VHS?
No.
VHS is all right. I'll accept it.
What if I were to project the Venture Brothers to you from the street into your bedroom onto your wall?
Like telepathically? Like Professor X?
Yeah. What if I were to buy some elaborate Venture Brothers puppets and reenact the episodes for you?
That would be good. I like live stuff like that.
Kind of a performance art, avant-garde.
I was going to say something about something. Oh, Jay, I was going to ask you, because in our Claremont episode, you talked about liking the New Mutants. Were you a fan of all the times that Sunspot mentioned being a huge fan of Magnum PI?
You know, I don't think I made that connection because when I was growing up, Magnum PI was like in the top 10. So it was like mentioning, I don't know. I didn't even notice. I need to go back and reread those.
I think we all like. I liked like Dukes of Hazzard. Remember the Fall Guy, Airwolf. You know, it's like MacGyver was the big one for me. Like on my
the 80s was the best for character-based 1-hour shows that had sort of an adventurous element to them. You know, the 80s is when they said we don't just want. Because remember, the 70s was, you know, Columbo and Rockford Files. It was the detective. In the 80s, they said, let's have it be adventure. And the Fall Guy and MacGyver, they were really good, just all-purpose adventures. And I think we took it for granted. I'm kind of enjoying going back through them. Like Magnum PI is my current choice, but I'm going to do Quantum Leap. I might do Fall Guy.
My wife actually has MacGyver on. She has some seasons of MacGyver on DVD. I keep meaning to I should bust those out and take a look at those. I was such a fan that when I was like 7th or 8 years old, my dad got me a pocket knife for like Christmas or something because I wanted a Swiss Army knife. I wanted it so bad because MacGyver had one.
Yeah, I used to be guaranteed to get a room full of laughs. I was in the Air Force in the 90s. And, you know, when you're in the military deployed, you always have to kind of solve a problem or figure out how to get something to work. And somebody would always go, yeah, it wasn't working, but I MacGyvered it. And everybody would kind of chuckle, go, here's a MacGyver reference. And now it seems like so corny, but in 1992,
it doesn't sound like any humor. It's like it's a functional part of our language now. Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna MacGyver this thing. It's like not even funny. It's just
I mean, now it's like nothing. Now. But I can remember the moment when that was like amazing. A fresh joke to make. it lasted about 5 minutes.
That was like kind of a unique. That had to be tough on the writers. That's a very unique premise. He doesn't carry any guns. What he carries is a pocket knife and a roll of duct tape with him at all times, and he kind of manufactures these escapes or whatever, like using, you know, like you have to create these scenarios in which like that's, you know, do a DIY approach. You know, because most adventure heroes, it's all about kicking ass. He never kicked ass. He always got his ass kicked. And then like once he was captured, he'd devise something with, you know, that had to be pretty tough to write, like for that many episodes.
It was, and that's why my hats off to Magnum PI. I enjoyed it as a adolescent and teen, but I did not realize how good it was looking back with a more critical eye.
So what
The
is the
production
premise of
value.
Magnum PI? Like, is he just a private eye in Hawaii?
No, the premise, it's looking back, I'm 48 now. I can see that it's sort of a male middle-aged fantasy because he is living, there is this gigantic rich guy's estate in Hawaii. His name's Robert Wright or Robin Wright, I can't remember, but he's a mysterious absent writer, kind of like Charlie was never on Charlie's Angels, except, you know, he had a voice. And Magnum PI has been allowed to live on this estate because of some indebtedness. And it does flashbacks to Vietnam. He was a Green Beret in Vietnam, so was TC. And he has these mysterious things in his past that about him. And then Higgins is the caretaker of that estate, i.e. this Englishman that the same writer has living there. And so the writer has told Higgins, let this guy live here. But there's a rivalry between Higgins and Magnum PI because Higgins feels like he does a good job looking after the place. And Magnum PI is this guy. And as a condition of living there, he's allowed to drive that Ferrari like it's his own car. It belongs to the rich master of the estate. And he is a private investigator. He takes on gigs. And so just every week he gets in an adventure. His friend from Vietnam does tourist rides on the helicopter. You know, you can do that in Hawaii. So approximately 2 out of every 3 episodes, they get in some kind of jam where TC has to fly in the helicopter. And they did fresh shots for that. They're not using file footage. They will do a story that involves a helicopter and the island, and they're driving all over it. But the premise is he's kind of like MacGyver in the sense that he's tough, but he usually solves the problem without shooting. He uses his wits and not his fists. And by the way, he's apparently dreamy, but I wouldn't be able to speak to that.
Right. Well, do you imagine that alternate reality where he was able to play Indiana Jones instead of Harrison Ford?
Oh yeah. I mean, I can't. Harrison Ford is so perfect, but when I look at Magnum PI, Tom Selleck, I think that was one of the most handsome actors of all time. He's so great. He's so great that he never even really made anything else good, and they just keep shoehorning him into stuff. He's just been around for like going on 40 years now, and there's not really one movie you could say, oh, 3 Men and a Baby, that holds up. I mean, everything he's been in is kind of forgettable, but he's eternal. Maybe he's still got a hit show, Blue Bloods.
Yeah, you know what he is? He's just a likable guy.
Yeah.
He just comes across as very likable.
So you guys should check that one out. Magnum
PI
PI really,
Vietnam, and it
really
reminded me. I just finished the Ken Burns Vietnam documentary. Man, wasn't
that great?
God, I cried several times throughout that documentary. Just like it's kind of like I wanted to do like one on the Korean War, but I think I'd cry even more during a Korean War one. When they talked to the veterans and like when they left all the people behind in the final episode. It's just, man, what a time in history, and to really, for me, it's always like, I was really excited that he did that documentary because it's like something I've always wanted to know more about. And it never really there's never been anything like that until now. So it's something it's not, action, fantasy, whatever, but it's something I'd strongly recommend everyone to watch because it's incredibly powerful and moving.
You should go back and watch We Were Soldiers with Mel Gibson because having seen Ken Burns Vietnam, I assumed that they had taken tons of liberties in We Were Soldiers because that was based on the book of that guy, the colonel. Right. But sure enough, it was exactly like real life. And We Were Soldiers is a great movie. The colonel that I'm talking about, it was in 1966. It's those guys that got basically ambushed by the NBA in 1966, and 300 men held off 5,000, and very just heroic stand. And when the colonel they have the footage of him being interviewed on Ken Burns Vietnam, and he chokes up on national television and says, I just can't say enough about the bravery and the heart and soul of the American soldier. And that's what We Were Soldiers was about.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, he kind of also like adds a bit of perspective to like why Rambo 2 was such a popular movie. After watching like kind of everything in Vietnam, kind of having that fantasy of a guy like Rambo coming back and saving the POWs and everything, you kind of see why that was.
Oh yeah, I mean,
such.
You guys know
right now, if you watch, it's not a very good movie, but back then it was probably such a cathartic thing to watch.
It was. I mean, I lived it as a 16 or 17-year-old. I was born in '69, so I grew up in the aftermath of everything you saw in Ken Burns Vietnam. And there was a whole generation of us, Alex P. Keaton generation, that were just like, why are we in such a funk? You know, America's great. So by the time 85 rolled around, we were ready for like, yeah. And I think it was a snapback effect from just the deep, heartbreaking division and tragedy of Vietnam. And by 85 or 86,
Right,
people
Masters
were
of
ready
the
to.
Universe started the healing. Thundercats finished it. Great.
This ties in with one of our previous episodes of how 80s sword and sorcery cartoons contributed to the renewal of American culture.
Yep. I mean, didn't they call him Reagan the Barbarian when he first started running?
That's right. There was a triple effect of
loincloth.
Yeah. There was a triple effect of 80s sword and sorcery cartoons, 80s independent comics, and Rambo that basically brought America back.
They edited the footage where it says Gorbachev tear down that wall. Originally, the unedited footage, you can go on YouTube and find it, says sorcerer tear down your mystic wall, and then he held a sword in the air.
That's right. Well, gentlemen, I think we about covered it. What do you think?
All right. I think that imagining Ronald Reagan in a loincloth is the bottom of the barrel, and we should probably move on with our lives.
I have gotten a complete picture of Thor Ragnarok. We exhaustively covered Thor Ragnarok. I don't need to see the movie now.
Right. I love that 80s. By the way, just as a side note, I love that 80s video game soundtrack toward the end where he's fighting the guys. You know what I'm talking about, Jay?
Yes.
I love that.
Well, that's part of what I meant by Guardians of the Galaxy. If you look at the design of the logo for this movie, some of the music and the 80s music on the outro, they're going for that kind of
Guardians is
retro.
70s, though.
Huh?
Guardians is more 70s-ish.
It is, but is your brain so tiny that you can't kind of stretch it that far? I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is set in 1980, or at least the flashback part is.
My brain is pretty tiny, so.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, is it such a huge leap? I'm just going to say it. Jason says 70s music is terrible.
The 70s is a 7, and the 80s has an 8, so I don't even know what the fuck you're talking about.
I'm just going to, hey, PG-13.
I don't know.
I'm just going to come out and say it. Jason says 70s music is terrible. And
no, that's Jeff. Jeff is the one that says it's terrible.
No, it's Jason. Jason says 70s is terrible. And all of pop culture is conspiring to prove him wrong through the Guardians of the Galaxy trends and everything else. It's like rubbing his nose in it.
70s was terrible, did you? I thought that was Jeff.
It's pretty much Jason.
I've said it first, but I took the position that, it's mostly bad. But Guardians of the Galaxy, which I think is the movie that all three of us think is overrated.
You don't like Queen?
70s.
What about Rolling Stones?
Mostly. That's why I say mostly.
What about John?
Of course, Queen is
work, huh? Tell me you don't like that. The Commodores.
But Queen is great, yeah. Queen and Rolling Stones. But the Rolling Stones is a '60s band, and John Lennon's a '60s. You know, like things that started in the '60s and extended into the '70s are generally good.
You know, Led Zeppelin didn't write songs that everyone liked. They left that to the Bee Gees.
I think the Bee Gees everything in the '70s was great.
Even Led Zeppelin, they were the Yardbirds in the '60s. See, anything with roots in the '60s.
What about Conan and Swamp Thing? Oh, you know what else started in the '70s? Just a guy you might have heard of. I don't know his name's Chris Claremont.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Right. But
we were talking about. I'm mainly talking more about music.
Comic books are the.
I'm mainly talking more about music.
Yeah, it was limited to music.
Well then,
he didn't actually hate the years like number 7 or anything. It was
well, what about the John Williams 1978 Superman soundtrack? What?
Yeah,
that's good. That's good.
What about the Bee Gees?
I consider the late '70s to be the '80s.
Yeah,
up through 1975, it's really the '60s, and then '76 on is really the '80s. So
yeah, that's the problem.
That's Frank Saxon. Yeah.
I remember that Frank Saxon argument. Yeah, just like where he insisted 1980. You know, the first decade. I was like, oh yeah, I was born in the late 70s. What year? 1980. You know, like what are you talking about?
Yeah.
80s.
Saxon,
1980s.
he's
Part
got
of
a
the 80s.
decade. He's got a decade theory. I think he also thinks the Bronze Age of comics started with All New X-Men in '75, which is not, it was not crazy. You'll hear that from time to time, but
You'll hear it from crazy people.
I know, because the correct answer is the launch of Conan by Marvel Comics. It's clearly the correct answer, but yeah, that's when the Bronze Age started. All right.
Jack Kirby leaving Marvel.
Jack Kirby leaving, but that actually took place right after Conan launched, so it's perfect that Conan launched.
Maybe he left because of Conan. We'll never know.
He left because
sorry,
he recognized the Bronze Age was starting.
That's true.
So can we very quickly sum up?
This is going to be a decade of shit music, and I don't want to be here for it.
That's right. Sum up.
All right, go, Jason.
Just really quickly, what are our final scores on the movies?
I would say Thor Ragnarok, like an A-.
Okay.
Justice League, I would
give
say,
it a 7.
Go ahead.
I give Thor a 7.5. You know, a 7.5 out of 10. And Justice League I have not seen, so I will give it a 0.
Okay.
No, I haven't seen it.
Wait, what did you say about Justice League, Council?
Oh, I would say Justice League. Like I said in my online review on the message board, I kind of compared it to movies like X3, X-Men United, and Jessica Alba, Fantastic Four. Like the critic in me would probably give it like about a C, but the fanboy in me, I gave it an A. I just had so much fun, and maybe it was just because seeing Superman abused so badly in Batman versus Superman. It was just the thrill of him being the leader of all the superheroes and kind of being the ass kicker. Like I said, it's not a great movie. It's not a good movie. I wouldn't just say to someone, "This is a great," watch, like Winter Soldier is a great movie. The Dark Knight is a great movie. It's a okay movie that's just entertaining while you're watching it. But if you're a big time Justice League fan and a big time Superman fan, I would give it an A just for pure entertainment value.
Okay.
And you said you would give it an A+ based on the craft of film. Am I right?
A++. For Justice League, yeah, I do have that dichotomy too. I feel like it's one I might eventually buy on DVD just to watch certain scenes over and over that I really enjoyed a lot.
Like Ang Lee's Hulk, yeah.
No, that's good all the way through.
The army scene in the desert.
It's one of many awesome, great scenes in Ang Lee's Hulk. Yes. Yeah, Justice League. Yeah, it did leave me feeling a little empty at the end. I didn't feel like it was quite fulfilling movie experience that I wanted, but certainly there are certain scenes that are A+ scenes in there. I think Gal, however you say her last name,
Gadot,
is just as good. I think as she. Gal Gadot is just as good in that movie as she is in Wonder Woman, and
she's great in Batman and Superman too. She's definitely the bright spot in that movie.
Yeah,
Justice League is for me. The problem with Justice League, there's no story there. It's just like a mediocre, recycled. Hey, this guy's got the MacGuffin. We got to stop the MacGuffin. It's one of those movies where the entertainment value stems all from watching the actors interact and wear the costumes. There's nothing really there beyond it. Like Gal Gadot's very charismatic and charming as Wonder Woman, and then she looks cool in the armor. Superman is, awesome in his suit and flying around and shooting his laser eyes and everything. Batman rolls around and throws a bat around. That's the fun of the movie, not like a great story and engaging character development or anything like that.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I give it. I don't know. B, I guess.
Yeah, it's more of a best director movie, not a best picture movie, I would say. That didn't make any sense at all. All right.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody.
This is
to
cohesive.
To
a cohesive episode that wasn't all rambling at all.
Yeah, our best yet. And we'll see you next time. All right.